between items 5 and 6, or directly after 6, please. I'd like to report out of closed session.
So moved.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Move to approve.
I'll second.
Okay. And Mrs. Reardon, if you would report out of closed session, please.
Okay, the board authorized the board president and HR to enter into contract negotiations with prospective employee for the position of executive director / superintendent. Voting yes, Kathy Duran, John Porter, Patricia Rardin, Gary Roberts, Mark Weiss. Voting no, Ellen McIsaac. Abstaining, Michelle Gookins, Gianna Huerta, and Paul Scott.
Thank you. But we haven't actually approved the agenda yet, right?
No, we didn't have the vote on it.
That,
We have a
okay,
second.
we amended the agenda. Now we can approve the, or did we approve it?
No,
I
we had a
forgot.
second, no.
Okay, could I have a motion to approve the agenda, please?
We
We already did.
We
We just
did.
need to vote. We just need to vote.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okay. I'd like to remind the audience that we all are being recorded tonight, and that the video will be available online after the meeting. Do we have any requests to address the board? No speaker cards? Okay, thank you. We'll take a motion for item number 7 to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The item passes. Item number 8, the board is asked to consider and review and approve the second interim budget report. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Do we have a presentation?
Oh, sure, if you want one.
Well, I think the board would be interested,
Okay.
yes.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay, good evening and Happy New Year. I wasn't here last month, so good to see you all again this year. So we're going to briefly go over the second interim report. Just giving you a brief overview on how we performed for the second quarter of the year. Thank you so much. So for the second interim, the highlights, we still remain financially stable. We projecting a surplus of $752,000. We have our positive fund balance. We're projecting that at 5.3. Our net asset balance, we're projecting that at 10.4 million at the end of the year. Our projected days cash on hand is 95 days. That's average days cash on hand. We do have that bond requirement. Our bond requires us to have 45 days cash on hand, so we're projecting to meet that at the end of the year. Our debt service coverage ratio is going to be a 1.28. Our requirement is 1.20. So you can see we're a little bit close with that debt service coverage, but we are going to maintain that at the end of the year. If it starts to get a little bit lower, we will adjust some of our expenditures and definitely let you know. We'll work with Paul to make sure that we do not dip below the 1.20. Our total enrollment that we're forecasting, or our P1, 2,300 students. Our ADA came in at 2251, and that was at the P1 that was reported in the fall of 210. And that's where all of our revenue and expenditures are based on, is at that P1 number at 22.5. That's really nice. So with the second interim report, the district just likes to compare what we projected at the first interim versus the second quarter. So as you can see here, if you can see the total revenue all the way over to the right-hand side here, you'll see that our revenue increase was only about $56,000. So we, there's a little fluctuation between all of the revenue categories, but ultimately our revenue is pretty consistent to what we reported in the first interim. But overall, for the entire year, just giving you a projection of what how we're looking at the end of the year, our total revenue that we're projecting at the end of the year, we have an increase of 1.3 million, and that's due to our increase in our ADA by 53. So all of our revenue increases compared to our budget is based on our ADA, and we do have some other grants that came in with our local revenue. We had some, our E-rate credits, we had some bond interest when it closed, and we had some other USAC credits. So that added to that total revenue projection of 1.34 million in the year. Those are expenditures. Oh, can go down, sorry. So expenditures again, comparing first interim with the second interim report, our variance is only about $180,000 compared to the first interim report. So there wasn't a lot of fluctuation going on there. But in the narrative that I wrote to the district, if there were any variances above 100K, I actually gave them an explanation for that compared to the 2 quarters. Overall, for the end of the year, our expenditures have increased. We're projecting that they're increased about 1.5 million. And I've included some of the explanations below. Some of them are consistent with prior quarter when we came out. The salaries increased, books and supplies also increased. Our professional services actually increased this time around due to we had some more legal expenses this time. So that's another expense that increased and added to that that projection at the end of the year. But overall, compared to the first quarter, it's still consistent. But I was able to point out all of the variances in the narrative that we're presenting to the district. So they'll have the full report. This is just a small synopsis there. We can go to the fund balance really quickly. So our fund balance, again, we are meeting the district's required reserve. They require us to have the 5.5% reserve of our expenditures. We exceed that by 8.8 million. So we're over our reserve for that the district requires, and you all that we're always over that requirement. As you can see, I can't really see, but our reserve that 5% is coming out to 1.5 million. And again, you can see our ending fund balance is at 10.5 million that we're projecting at the end of the year. So again, we're still moving along quite well here. Can you move down again? And then I also provided just a brief overview of the multi-year projections. We're also supposed to provide the current year as well as 2 years projected out, so that you can see how we're going to fare in the next couple of years or subsequent years. So if everything was consistent, I have the assumptions at the top here. We just had a 2% increase in our whole across the board. Our enrollment is going to be consistent, meaning it's at 2350, and then our daily attendance is pretty much the same. You can see our revenue is steadily going up. Our expenditures, in comparison, we have surpluses throughout the next 3 years that we're projecting. Again, everything is very consistent, very bland. And then you can see how our fund balance is also increasing for the next 3 years as well. And you can see how hefty our fund balance is looking as well. It's not going down, it's not dipping. Our cash balance also in the next 3 years is consistently going up. And also I have the debt service coverage ratios at the bottom, so you can see we're projecting to meet those in subsequent years, as well as meeting our average days cash on hand. So this is also, well, the debt service and the adjustment, that's just for you, but the subsequent years will go to the district, so they'll be able to see, how the school is faring in the next couple of years, making sure there aren't any deficits, our cash is good, that we're meeting the reserves. If there are any variances, they have been noted in the report. So I don't know if you have any questions, or if you had time. Sorry, we just got to join today. You just switch your meeting on us, but it's good. So if you have any questions.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have a question?
Oh, I've
Go
always
ahead.
got questions.
Go ahead.
Sure.
Go
So
ahead.
can you tell me a little bit more about the child nutrition, the shift that I'm seeing in that? Is that a utilization? Are we challenged with getting applications? What's causing that?
So
area?
that is something that we would need to speak with the person who actually that handles your lunch data, because usually what happens if you have the older kids, it depends on if they're eating lunch, it's kind of hard to say. If they're not eating lunch and they don't order lunch, obviously you're not gonna get that revenue and it's not gonna be expense. So in your particular projections, the revenue is going down and the expense is going down proportionately. But again, it all depends on if the kids are eating, if they're not eating, and I'm not really sure. I know you have the little kids now, so they should not have the option of not to eat. I know that sometimes it happens with the high school kids, that they're just not picking up lunch, and that rate of consumption goes down, so that will affect it. But usually if we see that that trend picks up, we will adjust the forecast as such. So if we see that, you know, I know December goes down because you're not here, but they're not eating in December because they're on vacation, but usually if you see it goes up, maybe you'll pick up in the spring. But again, that all depends on, you you build them whatever they, whatever you order and whatever the kids are eating, that's how they report to the CNIPS. So we're reporting our revenue, what is reported out to the CNIPS, which is the lunch data. So it's kind of that trend. It is going down. I did notice that, but it happens with, I would say, high school kids more.
But doesn't that,
Absolutely, it happens, but I would have thought that we would have factored that into our forecast and
that's my question.
the questions that we would have this year would be at the elementary school level. So if the elementary school drop off is causing this, then we've got littles who aren't eating, and we want to kind of dig into that a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'm curious.
We
I'd
would
love
have
to
to
hear more about it.
Okay, definitely. We can definitely look into that to see where there is. It could be just the high school and maybe that.
Mrs.
because you're all
Jackie,
in one.
could I ask that we get a report from our cafeteria manager on our lunch participation rates by elementary, middle, and high school, and compared to middle school and high school compared to last year?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Just, just an aside on that, I being a high school teacher, I know a lot of times high school kids do not want to participate in those, and I think one of the things is that I've always felt is we have to do something as staff to get them to participate. It's something very important for them, and one of the things I think getting the information is one. The other is if we don't have the participation at the high school or junior high level, what are some things we might try to do? I always felt like having a principal in there at breakfast time or having a principal in at lunchtime. Sometimes those are ways to get kids in to get that nourishment because it's so important for them.
And sometimes I think they just have to pick it up and actually, I don't know if they have to eat it. I
Well,
don't know
there's
how
all
it works
sorts of
here, but-
things involved
they
in
have to.
whether children decide to eat or not. And so I think our cafeteria manager probably can answer those questions about, are we not offering what they're interested in? Or is our dip simply a traditional dip because of the November and December breaks? I think we'd like to know that.
Yeah.
Because if that's a trend, Mr. Roberts is right, we need to do something about that.
Just FYI, we do have some parents from our coffee and conversation meeting who will be meeting with our cafeteria manager next week
Great.
to address items for some kids are vegan, some are this, some are that, and so oftentimes the parents aren't in there to know what's offered and what's done. So to get those two together, we're doing that next
Good.
week as well. So
Thank you very much. Okay. Are there any other
I
questions?
do. You mentioned there's a 5% reserve,
Yes, sir. That's,
and isn't it, I thought it was 3% required.
That's a state requirement.
That's a state requirement.
State requirement.
I believe we have a policy.
Policy
I think.
required, setting it at 5%. Okay.
yes, but you definitely, you've always met, that requirement, and really now, since you're over that, we kind of focus on those bond requirements now, just make sure we're at that 45 days and 1.2, but your reserve has always been exceeding that. And
Okay.
Yes,
Paul, just real quick, because I had the same conversation about two years ago, and Spencer, and I didn't know, because when we want to build, we have to go out and get our own, we're not under the state, and to get a good ratio or whatever, we have to keep a higher
A higher percentage.
balance, a higher
Okay.
reserve or they will not give us, the financial.
Does anybody else have any questions? Thank you, Teresa. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Item passes. Item number 9, consideration of the 2019-20 Consolidated Application Winter Reporting. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Are there any questions? Teresa, perhaps you can answer a question for me. I noticed on these pages, first of all, I thought this was exceptionally short. As I remember the CONAP, it's very, very long, and this one is only about 7 or 8 pages long.
Yes, so this is sort of like the interim reporting, so the main reporting to actually receive funding is done in June.
Right,
that-
but I didn't remember that this one was this short.
Yes, they're
Okay.
just really just checking off, the amount that you received, how much you've spent, so they're very short, even the applications aren't that long.
Okay, so then as I looked at this one, I think it is the second page, and I didn't pull it up on my tablet. The low income percentage is
78.
Yes, but then further on in the report, it's over 80%. It's like 82 or 83%. What accounts for that variance?
So, there may be, and I'm not sure what page you're looking, so I know the 78, that was definitely pre-populated. Your unduplicated rate is about 82%, that includes the free reduced lunch, that includes Foster.
So they're two different, even though the title is the same, they're two different.
It could be, I can definitely check that for you, because I know that the 78, it's pre-populated for you, but your unduplicated rate is about 82, so I need to see.
Yeah, it's,
Let me pull that up, because I have a report on my machine, I can pull it up, but I'm pretty sure one is probably unduplicated and, but usually they fall into the same category, English learners, Foster, she has it on her phone.
they both say low income percentage of students.
Student percent.
Yes, I know the 82 is unduplicated. Just be fast.
No.
I don't know.
Oh, I should have had our gentleman click on it up there. I didn't think about that.
I wonder if that one is the concentration percentage that they use.
You wanna look?
Maybe the LCFL.
I've got them both here.
Well, that's why I was questioning why there were no more pages, because generally there are some instruction information pages.
This is the short one.
No, I did this report for years.
So here's the.
No, it's not. And you know when I is that what they're doing?
No, this is just, it's still.
I don't have
And
to see it.
I know that this one's pre-populated, so.
If I could ask you to take a look to
Sure,
make
yeah.
sure. Now, when does this, what's the deadline
So
for
the deadline
submitting
for
this?
to be submitted is the 28th of February, so this is a draft, this hasn't been submitted at all. So, I can definitely get that exact answer for you, but I know the 78 pre-populates, and I think I'm pretty sure the 82 is just unduplicated. The difference between, I can figure out what that is. And I probably.
What
have
I'd
it on my
like is
LCFS
if you could assure us that both of those numbers are
the
correct,
same? Okay.
what they represent, and if you would send that to Melinda, she could forward it to the board.
Okay.
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 So if I could have, if we could amend our motion to approve the CONAP so that it can be submitted without another board meeting, presuming that Charter Impact is able to substantiate the two percentages as correct.
So moved.
I can probably have it before we're done.
So you probably have it.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Huerta. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay. And then if you just forward that to Mrs. Jaggy, she can send it as an information item to
I'm
us.
gonna try.
And if it's wrong, we'll do what we need to do. Okay. Item number 10, Board Director Reports. Directors, do any of you have anything interesting?
Hi.
Mr. Roberts?
Just a couple of things. One is, I wanna commend the, I don't know, it's the maintenance or the builders or whatever, but, you know, with everything that's gone on in the last so many months, I can remember when we were wondering when we were gonna start school, when we were gonna have fields, when we were gonna have everything done. And poof, it just kind of, it happened. And I just want to acknowledge, again, the staff for working over whatever it did to get things running smoothly and to continue having them run smoothly at the elementary. And the only thing is, I wish we had a few more athletic fields. It would be nice. But I just want to commend what we've done this year with everything else. The staff has done a fantastic job. And the other thing is, I was looking in this interim report, and there's a number 8, and it says progress towards K-3 class size reduction, not applicable to charter schools. But I was wondering if there's a possibility of, is there money from the state to do K-3 class size reduction? And would we be interested? I don't, it'd be kind of a, boy, I think a big star for our academy if it was something that was feasible to have K through 3 class size reduction. I guess I'm asking maybe a little investigation, a little report. It'd be really kind of neat to see. So, those are my 2. What?
Oh, we have a little musical action going on here, and we don't know who it is.
It's me.
Are there any other comments from directors? Okay. Mrs. Jaggy, do you have a report for us tonight?
Nothing much that I haven't shared with the board already. Just I'm pleased to work with the board that collaborates, that's open, that's honest, that recognizes things, that moves forward. There's a lot that's gone on in the past, and I feel that the momentum is moving forward. We're looking at next year. We're trying to get a calendar out for the parents. We're getting a master schedule. We're filling out all the reports, and those things just kind of let us know that we're moving on. We're getting done what needs to be done, and that gives us peace, I think, to our community as well as our employees to know that they have such a dedicated board who fiercely protects this school and this community. So my hat's off to you for the steps you've taken and the steps you will continue to take to ensure the good things we have going on here. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We have no need to recess to close session again. We've already reported the actions out, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
What? What?
Really?
What?
Move to
You're
adjourn.
kidding.
Hurry up. Make a
I need a
motion before she changes her mind.
I'll second Gary's motion.
All those in favor? We are adjourned.